Most of the damage your engine ever sees happens in the first few seconds after you start it, and almost nobody pays attention to what they're doing in that window. The wrong habits here slowly destroy engines, transmissions, and batteries years early. In this video, I'll walk you through 14 startup mistakes to avoid so your car lasts longer and performs better. Let's start with a habit that quietly hurts your car before the engine even fires up. Number 14. Starting with everything on. This one is far worse than people think. If you've ever turned the key and watched your lights dim, your radio reset, or your engine crank slowly, this habit is probably the cause. Loading your car with every accessory before the engine is even alive quietly stresses your battery and alternator, long before you feel anything behind the wheel. Look, your battery's job is simple. Give a massive burst of power to crank the engine. That's it. But when the blower's blasting, the rear defrost is glowing, the heated seats are roasting, and 3 chargers are pulling power, the battery has to feed all of that, plus the starter. Voltage nosedives, modules freak out, and the starter fights through thick oil with half the juice it needs. I've seen cars come in with random no starts that were nothing more than exhausted battery hammered by this exact morning routine. One owner said their radio restarted every single crank. Classic voltage dip behavior. And once the batteries drag low, the alternator gets punished too, running at max output, trying to refill it every drive. The fix is dead simple. Start the car first. Let the idle settle, then turn on what you need. Your battery lasts longer, your alternator stays cooler, and your car starts clean every morning. But that's nothing compared to the damage waiting for you on icy mornings. Number 13. Starting with frozen wipers. This one destroys wiper systems faster than any snowstorm ever will. If you've ever hit start on a cold morning and heard a dull TH from the windshield, that was your wiper motor slamming into a wall of ice. And trust me, it only loses that fight for so long. Most drivers don't even realize their wipers are still switched on when they shut the car off. So the next morning, the motor wakes up before they do and immediately tries to rip frozen rubber off the glass. Look, that motor is built for movement, not for dead-stop torque. When the blades are glued to the windshield with ice, the motor stalls, the current spikes, and something upstream starts to give. Sometimes it's a blown fuse. Sometimes it's a twisted linkage. And sometimes it's a cooked motor that now smells like warm electrical plastic every time you turn the key. I've seen cars come in with one lonely blade sweeping while the other just sits there frozen at the edge like it gave up on life. The owner always says the same thing. It worked fine yesterday. The fix couldn't be easier. Turn your wipers fully off before shutdown and free the blades before you start the car. Your wiper motor and your windshield will thank you every winter. And the next one proves your foot can cause trouble long before the engine runs. Number 12. Pumping the gas before crank. This one is a ghost habit from the carburetor era. And trust me, it does more harm than good on a modern engine. If you're still tapping the pedal before you hit start, you're basically arguing with a computer that already knows exactly how much fuel your engine needs down to the millisecond. Look, on old carbureted cars, pumping the pedal actually sprayed fuel into the intake. On a modern fuel-injected engine, it does nothing but confuse things. The AQ handles cold starts, warm starts, and everything in between. When you stab the pedal, all you're doing is forcing the throttle open when the engine isn't ready. And that can load the cylinders with raw fuel they can't burn yet. Here's where drivers get burned. That extra fuel washes the thin oil film off the cylinder walls. Do it often enough, and you speed up wear on rings and walls, especially in engines already dealing with short trips or cold mornings. I've seen engines crank forever, call for wake, then stumble because the plugs were soaked from helpful pedal pumping. One driver came to me convinced his fuel pump was dying. No, he'd been flooding the engine every morning with 3 quick pedal jabs like his dad taught him. The fix is easy. Let the pump prime, crank normally, and save the pedal for actual driving, not rituals from the 1970s. And trust me, The next one burns more wallets than bad fuel ever will. Number 11, skipping the dashboard self-check. This one is sneaky because it feels like nothing. Just hop in, hit the button, and go. But trust me, starting your car without giving the cluster a split-second glance is how drivers miss the warnings that would have saved them hundreds, sometimes thousands. I've seen people swear a light just came on today, when the truth is it's been glowing at them for weeks. They just never looked. Here's the thing. When you power the car on, every major system wakes up and runs a quick self-check. The lights flash not to scare you, but to confirm the car can warn you if something's wrong. The battery light, the oil light, the ABS light, those aren't decorations. If one of them stays on after the sweep, something needs attention before you hit the road. Skip that moment and you're driving blind. That charging light you didn't notice. It could be the only heads-up you get before the alternator quits and leaves you coasting to the shoulder. That ABS light you ignored. You'll only realize what's missing when the wheels lock in the rain. One driver I worked with kept failing inspection and couldn't understand why. The check engine light had been lit every morning. He simply never waited long enough to see it. The fix is almost laughably easy. Ignition on. 1 second glance, then start. Your wallet will thank you. Before we move on, make sure you're subscribed. One small habit change can add years to your car's life. And this channel is where you learn the ones nobody teaches you in manuals. Number 10, forcing a locked wheel. Here's the move that wrecks more ignitions than people realize. You hop in, twist the key, and the wheel won't budge, so you yank harder. Trust me, that wrestling match is how steering columns end up ruined long before their time. When the wheel is jammed against a curb or parked at full lock, the whole column loads up and the lock pin binds itself tight. Forcing it only grinds metal against metal. I've seen keys bend, plastic heads crack, and ignition cylinders wear out just because someone kept twisting while the mechanism was screaming, "Not yet." On push-button cars, it's the same story. People lean into the wheel, hammer the button, and the tiny motor that controls the lock gets cooked, trying to fight a battle it was never built for. One day it finally gives up, and suddenly the car won't start, won't unlock, won't move from that parking spot. The feel is unmistakable. The key won't turn, the wheel snaps back, or the column makes a stiff clicking sound. That's the lock binding. Not a challenge to arm wrestle. The fix is easy. Light pressure on the key, gentle wobble on the wheel, and it'll pop free instantly. A little finesse here saves you a very big bill later. Now, let's talk about a move that wears out parts even when your car isn't moving. Number 9, holding the clutch forever. This one feels harmless, but it slowly grinds money out of every manual driver I've ever met. You hop in, press the clutch because the car won't start otherwise, and then you just sit there. Maybe you're answering a text, setting navigation, fixing your mirrors. Meanwhile, your clutch release bearing is getting crushed for no reason. Trust me, that little bearing was never designed to live under constant pressure. When you hold the pedal down, you're forcing the release bearing hard into the pressure plate fingers. If the engine's running, it's also spinning non-stop. That combo, low plus spin, creates heat, breaks down grease, and wears the bearing faster than any aggressive shift ever will. The first sign is usually a faint chirp or whine when you press the pedal. Ignore it, and the bearing eventually starts grinding, taking the pressure plate fingers with it. At that point, you're not fixing a noise. You're paying for a full clutch job. I've had drivers swear their clutch just died one morning, but years of long pedal holds were sitting quietly in the background. The fix is simple. Clutch in only when you're ready to crank, then let it out. Your bearing lives longer, your clutch lasts longer, and your wallet stays untouched. Now, let's go from a worn bearing to a habit that murders perfectly good batteries. Number 8, draining the battery in a CC. Here's the move that leaves more drivers stranded than almost anything else. Sitting in accessory mode like it's a lounge. It feels harmless. Just music on, phone charging, fan blowing while you wait a few minutes. But look, the second you do that, your battery becomes the only power plant in the entire car. And it wasn't built for that job. In those 10 to 20 quiet minutes, your infotainment screen, amp, blower, motor, chargers, and modules are chewing through charge that your starter desperately needs. I've seen perfectly healthy cars crank, like they're half asleep after one long phone call in a CC. The owner thinks the battery suddenly went weak. But the truth is, the battery was drained before the engine even had a chance. Here's where things get ugly. Once you finally start the car, the alternator has to rush to refill that lost charge. That means running harder and harder, which slowly shortens its life. Over time, you get the classic winter pattern. Slow crank, flashing lights, or the radio shutting itself off to save power. The fix is simple. If you're going to sit for more than a minute or two, either start the engine or cut the loads. Your battery will last longer, your alternator won't suffer, and your car will actually start when you need it. And the next one shows how a tiny mistake can age an engine a year at a time. Number 7. Killing it with micro moves. Here's the move that ruins more low-mileage cream puff engines than anything else. Starting the car just to shuffle it a few feet. Trust me, this one feels harmless, but it quietly does the kind of damage you only notice years later when the bill is huge. When you cold start an engine, it dumps extra fuel in to stay running. That's normal. But if you shut it off almost immediately, all that raw fuel and water vapor has already slipped past the rings and condensed inside the engine and exhaust. The oil never gets warm enough to burn it off. The muffler never heats enough to evaporate anything. Everything just sits there. Do this often, like moving cars around a tight driveway. And suddenly, your well-maintained vehicle has milky oil, fuel smell, dipsticks, and sludge forming faster than any normal schedule predicts. I've seen spark plugs foul, mufflers rot from the inside out, and cold start wear multiply just because the engine never reached proper temperature. This is how you end up with a rusty exhaust, a tired battery, and oil that degrades twice as fast, even though you barely drove. If you must shuffle cars, combine it with a real drive or tighten your oil intervals. Your engine will thank you later. And the next one proves warmth can sometimes do more harm than cold. Number 6, the remote idle wear cycle. This one catches almost everyone. Using remote start like a daily ritual and letting the car idle for 20 to 30 minutes before you ever sit in it. It feels luxurious, but trust me, it's quietly aging your engine faster than your mileage suggests. When an engine idles cold, it runs richer, warms slowly, and never reaches the high enough temperatures needed to burn off moisture and raw fuel. So every long idle session loads your oil with tiny amounts of fuel and water. You won't smell it right away, but over weeks, the dipstick starts carrying that faint fuel scent, and the oil thins out faster than the service interval expects. On GTI engines, this is where things get ugly. Fuel dilution is already a known issue. Add long idle sessions, and now you're stacking sludge, carbon buildup, and early wear on parts that should have lasted years longer. Exhaust components suffer too. Catalysts and filters need heat to clean themselves, and idle never gets them there. I've seen pampered cars remote started daily coming with worn oil, side tailpipes, and higher fuel use even though the owner barely drove. Use remote start sparingly. Keep it short and let gentle driving do the warming instead. The next one is the reason so many engines start noisy and end noisy. Number 5, the cold start throttle jab. Here's a habit that feels harmless but quietly chews through your engine's lifespan. Snapping the throttle the moment the engine fires. That cold start bark might sound good, but inside the block, everything is bone dry and at its loosest. It's the absolute worst moment to spike RPM. Look, when an engine wakes up, the oil is still sitting in the sump. The pump needs a few seconds to push it through the galleries and coat the bearings, rings, and cam lobes. Blip the throttle right now, and you're forcing metal to race before lubrication fully arrives. That's when you get those early morning ticks, chain rattles, and the slow creep of oil consumption as the miles stack up. I've opened engines where the owner swore they took great care of the car, yet the piston skirts were scuffed and the timing chain guides were chewed up. And every time the story was the same. Cold start revving was just part of their routine. Let the engine catch its breath. Give it a few calm seconds to build oil pressure, settle into its fast idle, and even out the mixture. Then drive gently until it's warm. Your engine will stay quieter, burn cleaner, and last years longer. Now, from engines to gearboxes, here's the habit that punishes both. Number 4, the instant gear drop. Here's a move that feels efficient but quietly beats up your transmission every single morning. Starting the car and slamming it straight into drive or reverse before the idle even settles. It doesn't sound dramatic, but trust me, that first second after a cold start is pure chaos inside the gearbox. When the engine fires, the transmission pump is just beginning to build pressure. The fluid is cold, thick, and moving slowly through the passages. At the same time, your idle is higher than normal because the ECU is trying to stabilize combustion. Drop in the gear right there, and you're forcing clutches and bands to grab with half-form hydraulic, pressure and extra torque coming through the converter. That's how you get that sharp bump, that little lurch, that thud you eventually start ignoring. Do this daily, and it adds up. You'll notice harsher engagements on cold mornings, a louder clunk shifting between R&D, or that delayed engagement where nothing happens, then it suddenly grabs. I've seen mounts torn, clutches glazed, and transmissions that felt old at 80,000 miles simply because the driver never paused 2 seconds before selecting gear. Let the idle settle, give the fluid a moment to wake up. Those few seconds are free insurance for thousands in future repairs. And the next one explains those mysterious morning steering noises. Number 3, cranking at full lock. Here's a move that looks harmless, but puts your steering system under maximum strain the second the engine wakes up. Start the car, crank the wheel to full lock while still parked, and you've just forced cold fluid, a cold pump, and cold joints to take a max effort load before they've even had a chance to settle. That whining sound you sometimes hear, that's the pump begging for mercy. When your car is stationary, the tires can't roll. Asterisk. They twist against the pavement. That twist pushes huge force back through the tie rods. Ball joints and rack add cold, thick steering fluid and a pump that's still building pressure. And suddenly, a simple driveway reverse out becomes one of the highest stress moments your front end sees all day. I've seen cars come into the shop with early rack leaks, tired pumps, and loose tie rod ends. All from years of these cold full lock maneuvers. Drivers usually blame old age, but the pattern is obvious. Heavy steering noise in parking lots, fluid seepage around the rack and front tires showing weird scrub patches. Rolling even a foot before turning changes everything. Give the system a second, let the tires move, and your steering will thank you every morning. Now, let's talk about a habit that ruins more mornings than bad weather ever will. Number 2, driving blind through fog. Here's the habit that causes more, I swear, they came out of nowhere crashes than people admit. When you start the car, see fogged up glass, and pull off anyway. You've basically chosen to drive with blurred vision. Trust me, your eyes can't beat physics. Condensation scatters light, hides movement, and turns headlights into glowing halos that wipe out depth perception. I've watched drivers back out of driveways using a tiny peephole they scraped with their sleeve, guessing where the curb is, hoping no kid or cyclist is behind them. That first 10 seconds is where most low-speed accidents happen. And a fogged windshield is like putting a greasy filter over your glasses. Even at slow speeds, one hidden mailbox or jogger suddenly appears way too late, and the danger doesn't stop once you're rolling. Turn onto a busy road with hazy side windows, and you can't properly judge cross traffic. Lane change through smeared mirrors, and you're relying on luck, not visibility. I've seen insurance reports blame poor visibility on vehicle glass more times than you believe. Give your EV 20 or 30 seconds. Hit the proper defog settings, let the glass clear fully, and then move. Those few seconds are cheaper than a collision repair, because the next one proves even smart cars are helpless when you start them blind. Number 1. Driving with a dash blindfolded. Here's the move that gives drivers false confidence at the exact moment they need real awareness. When you start the car with the ADAS cameras blocked by dust, stickers, snow, or a badly placed dash cam, your second set of eyes is basically blind. And the dangerous part? The car still feels normal. So you assume the safety net is there. Look, lane keeping, forward collision warning, and emergency braking all depend on the front camera seeing clearly. Block even a corner of that view, and the system either shuts down quietly or guesses wrong. I've seen drivers pull out of their driveway expecting lane assist to catch a drift, only to watch the system drop out because frost covered the sensor. When it fails silently until the moment you really need it. Radar works the same way. Cover it with slush or dirt. An adaptive cruise won't spot the slowing car ahead. That's how people get surprised by sudden closing gaps or phantom braking. And if you've replaced a windshield and skipped recalibration, the camera might be pointed a few millim off, which is enough to misread lane lines. Before you move, clear the sensors and check warnings. Your car can't help you if it can't see. Now that you know the startup habits that quietly hurt your car, don't make the next mistake at the gas pump. Our video, Never Do This Before Refueling, exposes the ones 90% still get.